Hey, welcome back. It's Laura at Hyperstamper. I have another antique book that I've turned into a junk journal, and this one it has a lovely, can I call this a diamond or argyle pattern almost? So it's got gold inlay and then the red cloth cover. I put some corner protectors on there. The name of this book was called Harlequin House, and I've got my vintage beads down the side here, and the cover was in really good condition. The inside had already pulled away from the spine, but let me show you what I've added here. I added this exquisite antique postcard, and it's just this lovely brook here with the country house and the country farm, and it says, "Wishing you many happy returns." And I put it so that you could open it up and read the greeting on the inside here. It was to Maudie. Wishing you a happy birthday from Evelyn, March 16th, 1910. Isn't that beautiful? And then I just put a little bit of lace down here, and I just think it's so lovely. It's beautiful. The original first pages of the book, and then here is some, the book itself is from 1939, and it has a little inscription here. Somebody owned it in 1943. So a vintage 1950s embroidery book page, and this is from 1968 here, the Funny Bones game. Remember that? If you're my age, you remember that. That was hilariously fun. A little bit of a journaling spot up here, and it says Beloved down here. I've got a vintage Renoir plate here from an old art book, and then a vintage American Highways road map atlas there. Wonderful vintage and antique clusters. And then over here I've got a 1955 postage stamp collector's page, and then this is from the early 1900s. Very brittle, so I put some antique paper on the back to give it some strength and some journaling opportunities. Just a little sunbeams. That came from 1920s music book, 1930s children's book, 1920s English music book on fuzzy card. Here is a beautiful postcard, and this, I believe, is, I want to say Italian? Oh, Portuguese, and that would have been from about the 1920s, and a glossy one at that. It looks brand new, but it is very old. And then this here was written in the early 1900s about an 1882, October 18th, 1882 news article. My sweetheart pocket there. And this here is a wonderful page from a teen country music book. Song hits open the door to the personal life of Tommy Sands. How cool is that? Yeah, that would have been a little heart throb back then. And then the 1950s receipt in here to journal on. I've got a little pocket here on the stamp collector's page. So I got a vintage glassine envelope. And then I put some vintage and antique stamps in there. Is that cool? You can have all kinds of fun with those in your collages and artwork. Just decorate your journal more with them, or just have them to look at. This is a German banknote from 1927, and I just love the feel of it. It's wonderful, all the type and pressed stamping on it. This is from the early 1900s as well. The book Cranford, and antique paper on the back, and then another wonderful 1953 receipt here from Curtis Candy. Love it. A candy shop receipt. That's one of my favorites, that one. Vintage sewing book page. This is from the early 1900s. This plate here, lovely, lovely. A vintage botanical book page here. Let's see if you can see the whole thing. Isn't that lovely? I think it's so pretty. And this came from a 1920s sort of a home ec book. You've got a little girl here learning how to make muffins. And some recipes there that you should try. I really do think people should try the recipes in the old junk journals. I try to put one in every one of mine. This is just some of the scrap antique ephemera that I have that I put into a little booklet here just for even more fun. And then I've got a vintage playing card here and some old Monopoly money, very old, almost 100 years old. 1950s Theater Arts magazine page, and then this beautiful pineapple pattern here on this embroidered It was actually a huge doily, and that is from an antique book page there. That's from a vintage children's book page. Vintage. Look at this antique plate here. Isn't that lovely? She's, oh, I know I'm using the word lovely a lot, but that just describes how I feel about so many of these plates in here. This I pulled from the inside of a book, and it tore. And the book was in shambles, as you can see, but I just really liked the pattern, so I just outlined that antique page with it, and that is from 1950. Polish embroidery, gorgeous. This is just a really cool blank antique page there that you can journal on as well, and a children's book page with a little lemonade stand. I've always told my 3 boys, never ever pass a lemonade stand without buying a glass of lemonade from a child. Ever. Doesn't matter if you have to do a 360 pop a wheelie turn. So I'll pass that on to all of you. Very bossy. Here is a pretty piece of lace here, and this is one of the coolest interior spines that I've ever seen. It still has all of the strings that would have held the signatures in place intact. I was really careful. It took me about 20 minutes to pull this out so it stayed intact, but I love it. And then behind there are blank pages from this book, Harlequin House, for you to journal on. There's 2 of them there that say Harlequin House on them. I love it. A vintage music sheet here, just a little journaling tag. And here's a really cool place to journal here. All kinds of antique paper there. And that is truly antique paper. Vintage children's book page piece up there. And these next few pages are just spectacular. They're black and white antique botanical book pages. This one especially old. It's from the turn of the century, so like 1902 or so. Look at that beautiful, beautiful photography for that old. Let me keep going here. Look at this. This is Europe. Oh, it's sorry, 1914. 1914. It's just wonderful. It is one of the few European antique maps that I have. So, Nito Pepito. Spring Valley Corn Club. That's a little book page that just covered up some bugs that were on that page that I didn't like looking at. And another one of these wonderful antique book botanical pages. And then in here is a vintage antique book page. Just a book, what I mean is a book about antiques. And in this little pocket here on this vintage children's book page is this photograph that came from England, London. And this was the cast of a play. And Pirates, maybe? I'm not sure. But very cool. And that brings us to the last page of the book, the end. So I hope you love it as much as I love making it. It's at hyperstamper.etsy.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see them first. Bye for now.